Epsom MP David Seymour is demanding answers from the government over the closure of a major rehabilitation provider in his electorate. Checkpoints revealed that Laura Fergusson Rehabilitation is closing its rehab and respite services in Auckland, Whanganui and Waikato by August this year. Mr Seymour wants to know what will happen to the people who rely on it for their complex needs, and he says relocating the clients could be damaging to them and may end up costing taxpayers more.
Look, it's a very important facility for a lot of people in the Epsom electorate. A number of people, just members of the community who have some connection, but also a resident that I correspond with fairly frequently is quite distraught and has been in touch with me in relation to the closure of the Laura Fergusson Trust site in Great South Road.
So what can you tell us about his concerns and what he relies on Laura Fergusson for?
Well, this is a chap who lives full-time and has for several years now on the Laura Fergusson site, and his needs are provided for in a really helpful way by the trust there. So obviously it's his home, it's a place that provides him a lot of support, and he's understandably distraught about where his future lies. So
what have you done to get some answers?
So I've been in touch with the Trust. I haven't spoken with them yet, but I've also written to the Minister and just asked the very simple question. Initially, was she aware of the rumours, which have subsequently been confirmed? But secondly, what is the Crown's plan to provide for the folks that rely on the services? And what's going to be the cost of that? Because I suspect from the Crown's point of view, this is going to be false economy. It's going to actually cost the taxpayer more to provide potentially an inferior level of service without this specialist charitable facility providing quite a range of services all in one place.
Now, I'm assuming you're talking to about the Associate Minister of Health, Jenny Salesa, so you've written to her, have you?
That's right. I initially wrote to the Minister, but Jenny Salesa, as the Associate Minister, has responded. And can I just say, in my reply to her reply, I found occasion to use the word insouciant, which I don't get to use every day, but nevertheless we're continuing to try and get some specific answers about what the Crown's plans are there. They don't appear to have them at this point.
So what were you saying, she didn't particularly care about the issues you were raising with her?
She failed to provide specific answers about what the fiscal impacts are and what sort of provisions are in place, other than to say a lot of what you might call quite vague and expected material about, of course, preparations will be made, etc., but nothing concrete or specific that I could go back and reassure anyone that things are being taken care of.
Are you convinced that the people who use this facility are being taken care of and that there will be alternatives for them?
Well, at this point, the Minister can only reply in generalities. So clearly, from the Ministry of Health point of view, they're not sure. I've also copied that initial letter to Pat Snedden, the Chair of the Auckland District Health Board. Of course, we're in the ADHB region. In Epsom, I've had no response from him, although he might have regarded it as a letter primarily to the Minister. So at this point, having raised the question as the local MP, the answers are not forthcoming from the establishment, and I think that there's a very real concern for the people who rely on the LFT, but also for the taxpayer, which is going to pick up the tab for potentially an inferior range of services at higher cost dispersed across the place.
So if you think this is going to cost taxpayers more money, what is the motivation for the closure?
Well, that's one of the things that I'm trying to get at in my letter to the Minister. I want her to explain why it doesn't make sense to give the LFT more money if that's what it needs, because if they can't do it in one self-contained site with great facilities, highly specialised staff, getting the economies of scale of having everyone in the same place, and presumably free land because it's a charitable land that's been there for over 50 years, if they can't do it for a price in those circumstances, it's certainly going to cost more to do it elsewhere. And it seems to be false economy, and the main question I'd like to ask is, has the Crown really thought about the business case here? Would it not be better to pay more to LFT than try and provide services to look after these folks in other places?
But Laura Fergusson Rehabilitation itself has said it doesn't matter if we get more money, it's game over.
Well, I mean, I've never met a person who doesn't have a price. If they can't be serious that there's no price at which they'd continue to provide the services.
What do you think will happen to that land that they're on if they were to close?
Well, I mean, again, we can only speculate, but I'm not familiar with the precise legal ownership or the trust deed or what purposes it could be used for. I don't know the answers to those questions, but needless to say, land on Great South Road in Epsom is some of the most valuable land in New Zealand. It's certainly very valuable land, and you'd have to wonder what exactly it will be put to use for, if not in support of these folks in our community who, for various reasons need a little bit more support.
So what options are left to you? Just to continue to ask questions of Jenny Salesa, the Minister.
Well, as a local member of Parliament, I'll certainly be trying to hold the Crown to account, asking the right questions and getting them into a position where they have to actually tell us what's going on. So I'll continue doing that. I'll continue to talk to people throughout our community who may have knowledge and information in order that people who require the services, such as my long-time correspondent constituent there, and others are able to be looked after, and that the taxpayer doesn't end up paying twice as much to treat people in a way that ends up being inferior.
And that's Epsom MP David Seymour. Now, Checkpoint understands the Associate Minister, Jenny Salesa, is growing increasingly frustrated with Laura Fergusson Trust and its lack of cooperation with the Ministry of Health before announcing its closure.